My name is Sydney Montgomery, and I am a personal college counselor and law school admission consultant. I provide personalized 9th through 12th grade college counseling, and I help people embark on the law school application journey. As a daughter of military parents and growing up in a Jamaican household, education was so important to my family. As the first lawyer in my family and as a graduate of Princeton and Harvard Law School, I am passionate about helping students break down generational barriers, step confidently into their future, and create communities for life. And so today we are focused on part-time programs, all things part-time programs, how to choose a part-time versus a full-time program, the pros and cons of both, how to transfer maybe from a part-time program. Can you transfer from a part-time program, and what does that look like? Where do you transfer to? What about scholarship money? What about affordability? What about opportunities as a part-time student? What about summer clerkships as a part-time student? All things part-time. So I'm really excited because I feel like this is an area that doesn't get as much love in the law school world. I feel like there's a lot out there about full-time programs, but there are some really good reasons for why part-time programs might be the best for you. But I'm going to start off with just some overview of part-time programs and also kind of the pros and cons comparing them to the full-time programs. So, law school part-time programs, what do I even mean when I say part-time? How do you go to law school part-time, right? So for some of you that don't know, there are a lot of schools where you can go just in the evenings or just in the weekends instead of doing a full-time program. These work best for those who maybe have a lot of family commitments. Maybe, you're a mom, or you're a dad, and you're taking care of your kids, or you have a full-time job that you do not want to leave to go to law school because law school typically is 3 years. So you usually would need to leave your job, maybe perhaps to get a better job after law school. But it is that break in the career. And sometimes for financial reasons, people would like to stay at their job, or they want to work part-time, take care of their kids part-time, go to school part-time, and have their law school journey. This, maybe for some people it's a lifelong journey of going to law school. You've been wanting to go to law school for, over a decade. I have some people who have wanted to go to law school since 1999, right? And so I'm here to support that dream because that's the kind of dream that I can get behind. It's commitment that you've got and perseverance to still not give up on your dream and to still pursue it. So for some people, pursuing that dream means that you have to do it in tandem with other things. You can't just pause your life to go to law school. So instead of doing the traditional 3-year route for law school, you might be looking at a part-time program, which usually is about 4 years. So because you're only doing evening classes, or there are some schools, Mitchell Hamlin is a great example where you're doing, you're doing mainly weekend programs. It's longer. It takes a lot longer. There are, like I said, some pros and cons to this. Now, one of the things that people speak the most to is admissibility. Is it easier to get into a part-time program than a full-time program? And the answer is yes and no. So on some level, it could look like it's easier to get into a part-time program because you'll notice that the GPA and LSAT medians are lower in a lot of cases than the full-time program. So a school that has both a part-time and a full-time program might have different admission statistics. That doesn't necessarily mean that the school has lowered its standards for part-time students. Actually, what it means is that some of those softer or holistic factors count more. So usually in those admissions processes, the work experience, and or maybe family obligations that you have, but a lot of times that professional work experience is so crucial and so important. So you'll see sometimes where students who might have lower numbers get into these part-time programs, but you're not seeing maybe that they have substantial work experience or military experience or leadership and managerial experience, especially if you're looking at kind of executive programs. And so those things really count in a part-time admission cycle. They count a lot in a full-time admission cycle for sure. But sometimes I think part-time programs are more willing to be a little bit more generous in the numbers because of what they're trying to build in the class. You've heard me talk about it. When we talk about admissions, we're always talking about how we are shaping a class. They have certain goals and certain priorities that they want to kind of focus on. So it's never really just about you, although I know we all feel like admissions is kind of personal, like, oh, they didn't like me or they liked me. But really, you either fit into what they're trying to do in terms of shaping a class, or, they needed something else to fill the class in the way that they are looking for. So when you look at part-time classes, a lot of times they're looking for working professionals who have that managerial leadership experience. So if you're, for example, a college student and you haven't really had any work experience, I don't want you to think, oh, well, I can apply to a part-time program because my GPA median's a little lower and they'll take me in a part-time program. Well, not necessarily. You also don't have any work experience, which is so important. So I don't want anyone to think it's just easier, like the part-time program is just the way to get in if you don't have those numbers. Like, that's not true. They really are looking for kind of different things. Now, the other thing that I want you to be thinking about is the cohort that you're going to have. So when I was going to law school, I was on the young side. I was 21 when I started at Harvard, and I definitely came in with an undergrad mentality. I was like, where are my new friends? I am ready for new friends, and I'm 21 now. I'm ready to go to the bar. I was ready for fun. I did really well in law school. I also studied, but I was really there for relationship building, and like school was important, but I was like, these are the colleagues that I'm going to have. These are the relationships that I want to build, and I made some fantastic friends, most of whom were around my age, I'm going to be honest with you, because we were all looking and we were all in a certain place in our life. And I think place in life is so important. The average entering age for law school is somewhere around 25, 26. So, people always ask me, oh my God, I'm 45. Is that too old to go to law school? No, absolutely not. They said that the sections were random at Harvard, but I swear there was a section of people that mostly had kids. And I think I was in the section of people that mostly came straight from college or 1 or 2 years out, because we had a lot of young people in my section. And then some sections like had a lot of play dates with their kids, and like not a lot of people in my section had kids. So I don't know if I would believe it was completely random. But you want to be thinking of the cohort that you're building. If you are going to a part-time program, there will be less youth, right? Less 21-year-olds ready to take on the world and bars, and more probably people with families, or like I said, working adults, second career students, people who are older. So if that's you, if you're like, yes, those are my people, a part-time program in terms of the social aspect could be really, really great. And if you were like I was, and just ready to party, and have fun while still getting good grades, you might not have as much fun in a part-time program. Now, class size really matters for that as well, because some schools they have part-time programs that have 100 people per class, 200 people per class. And then some schools have part-time programs where they only have like 20. It's a very different law school experience when you only have 20 people in your class versus when you have at Harvard, we had like 550 people in our class. So it's a very different social dynamic. It's a very different networking experience. The question that I do get a lot is, what about opportunities in law school? What about joining journals and clinics and moot court? And, what about those experiences? A lot of schools have really tried with their part-time programs to still give that same law school experience, but the reality of it is it's going to differ school to school. Even, for example, I live in Maryland, so I'm going to pick on the University of Maryland, Carey School of Law. Fantastic school. But even they say in their part-time program, and their part-time program is ranked 5th in the nation, that part-time students are able to join, they say, journals, moot court, select clinics, right? You can still join clinics, but the reality is you might not be able to join every clinic. I know that when I was in law school, I did 3 clinics. The first clinic that I did 2L fall and 2L spring, and that was the food law and policy clinic, which I think would have been easy enough to do as a part-time student. It was mostly policy work, mostly remote. It involved me doing a lot of outside research and writing and kind of tracking my clinic time. You can do that from anywhere as a part-time student, as a full-time student, no problem. My 3L year in the fall, I worked at the Child and Youth Protection Unit with the Massachusetts Attorney General's office. So I was there 2 days a week, I believe, from like most of the day, honestly, like maybe half of the day, maybe 2 days a week. So if you're the type of person that you have a full-time job in the morning or even a part-time job in the morning and you're mostly looking to fit law school in the evening, well, the AG's office was not open in the evening, right? So I wouldn't have been able to do that experience because the AG's office wasn't open in the evening. I could only do that because I was, there in the morning. Same thing, my 3L spring, I was in the litigating, it was a domestic violence and divorce, like litigating in the family courts clinic. I just completely butchered that name. But basically, it was a student practice clinic where we worked with kind of the school had a pro bono legal clinic, which most schools do to support their clinical students. And I had a supervising attorney. But then I had my own clients, right? Like I had literally client meetings. And I had hearings and I got to argue motions and I got to litigate a divorce. It was very cool. Very trying at some times. And I eventually became a family law litigator, and that clinic I think was instrumental in my ability to get that job because I had practical trial experience and I had experience working with clients when I ended up applying after my clerkship to family law litigation firms. But those things are only open in the morning, right? The courts are not open at night. The courts are not open on the weekends. You have to meet with clients. It was like I was at a business or like a externship sort of speak during the day. And so when you look at the ability for you to do those things as a part-time student, it really is not based on whether you're a part-time student or a full-time student. It's actually really based on how you're spending your time. So if you don't have kids and you just want to do a part-time program and your day is kind of open, but you would just rather go to class at night, then your ability to do some of these clinics and journals are going to be almost the same as a full-time student. They're not saying, oh, you can't do it because you're part-time. But the reality is, like, you need to have that time during the day to do some of those hands-on practical experiences. And for me, the hands-on practical experiences of law school was so integral to my ability to leverage my experience after law school to help me with employment, to help me discern what I wanted to do, and to help me, just in my career. Like that was invaluable experience that I don't think you can really restrict to only evenings or weekend. So in the same vein, when we talk about summer programs, because I think this was a specific question, what about my ability to have a summer program or a summer clerkship? It's like the same answer. If you have a full-time job or even a part-time job that you don't intend to leave, and you're not able to take a break from during the summer, your ability to have those experiences may be limited. Because the summer clerkships and those are full-time. And honestly, sometimes they're more than full-time. But they expect all of you during the summer. So unless you're able to kind of shift your hours maybe so that your part-time job can be in the night and you can have kind of a daytime summer clerkship, if you will, like that is going to be really hard to work out. So again, the restriction on the summer programs is not whether you are a part-time student versus a full-time student. The restriction is on your time. What are you doing from 9 to 5? And this is the note that I really want to make about part-time programs, is that there's still a lot of work, right? You should still expect to spend at least 30 hours a week on your law school studies. So I don't want anyone to feel like they can just fit law school in to a tiny little corner and it's just going to stay there, right? I do law school from 6:30 to 8:30. No, you might be in class from 6:30 to 8:30, but you have to study, you have to learn how to case brief, you have to outline, you have to study for exams. Hopefully you're building your professional network. You might be going to firm happy hours because those are in the evening. So you might be doing some things, right? So I would say especially, when you're just getting into the groove, it can be hard to juggle. Not impossible. For some people, it is absolutely the right choice. But you have to know yourself and know the program, right? Because it can be hard to navigate the demands of law school and your family, and depending on what job you have. So make sure that your job is pretty flexible and they know that you're going to law school. I wouldn't like secretly go to law school. Um, I don't think that's going to work out very well. It's really good to have that conversation with your employer and be like, hey, I'm going to law school. So how can we make this work? And if it's a good place for you and, they really care about you, they will help you in that professional development. And if it's not a good place for you, then I don't know that they're the job you want to put your law school career on hold for, right? Because law school really is like a 2 feet in kind of place. So you have to think about, again, it's not the part-time program is not the issue. It's just like when you're in law school, it's like, I want you to think back to being in college, right? It's like if someone was like, oh, I can just go to college classes. And you can, right? There's tons of part-time college classes. But I want you, if you were able to go and live on campus, it was like your whole world. It was like you had the study groups and you might have the extracurricular activities and there was a lot going on. And like, honestly, that's, even though I definitely went in with a younger mentality, even with some of my older friends, it's the same way. There's extracurricular activities, there's student practice organizations. I was a really big part of the Black Law Student Association. And we met like on 7:00, which if you're in evening classes, you couldn't necessarily as much do. And sometimes we met during the day, but like there would be weekend things. We'd have ski trips, we'd have galas, we'd have fundraising events. There was a lot going on. Law school is like very a lot. If you want it to be. It doesn't have to be. But it can be. And if you have the opportunity to lean into it, I would. I absolutely would. So in terms of scholarships, I also want to let you know that some part-time programs definitely offer scholarships. And some part-time programs do not really offer as much scholarships. And you can find all of this out by going to a school's 509 report and kind of seeing the different things that they offer there. You know what? I'll pick on University of Maryland. I'll keep picking on them. I can't type today, obviously, though. All right. So I just put 509 report, and you can find the ABA standard 509 report. It looks something like this. It's like the most important document on law school applications you can find. It tells you how many applications they received. It tells you the deadlines. It tells you the acceptance rate. It breaks that down based on how many people they accepted in 75th, 50th, and 25th percentile, the undergraduate GPA, the number of seats available in clinics, the number of seminars, the number of co-curricular opportunities. There's a breakdown by race. There's a breakdown by tuition and fees, and you can see the difference between full-time and part-time tuition and fees. You can also see the grants and scholarships that were awarded, and you can see, this is what I really wanted to highlight for you, you can see where it says the grants and scholarships total, and then it gives you the number of students and the percentage of full-time students, and the number of students and percentage of part-time students. So you can see that you can see the number of people that received grants and scholarships. So for example, this is a 2018-2019 report for the University of Maryland. It looks like 83% of students in the full-time program, well, out of all of the people that they gave scholarships to, 83% of those were full-time and 17% of those were part-time students. What that looks like as a breakdown, of course, there were 108 total students in the part-time program and 80 of them received grants, which is actually, it's a big number. It's 74% of their part-time students received grants. When you look at the full-time program, it looks like 88% of their students received scholarships and grants, which is great. So and it even tells you the breakdown of how many of them received less than half tuition, half to full tuition, or full tuition scholarships. And they don't give more than full tuition scholarships. And you're like, what is more than full tuition scholarships? So like tuition is tuition, and then there's, personal fees and books and like other things that can make it more than with stipend. And then you can kind of see the percentage of students based on their, just the breakdown, the 75th, 50th, and 25th breakdown on how much money they receive for full and part-time. This is invaluable information because some of these part-time numbers are going to look really small, right? It's not going to be 74, it might be 2 or 5%. So you want to pick a school if you're looking at part-time programs that has a good percentage of their part-time students get scholarships, because some of you are going to part-time programs because you want to make it more affordable. But that doesn't make any sense if you would have gotten a full ride if you were full-time and you got $0 because you were part-time, right? That doesn't make sense. And for some of you, it will make more sense to go full-time and get a full ride or, a really great scholarship versus losing out on some of that money and having to work and doing part-time programs. And we're going to talk about transfers as well, but I just wanted to scroll down to the bottom of the ABA report because it actually tells you, and I love the ABA report, guys. It tells you how many people transferred out of the University of Maryland. It tells you how many people transferred in. That year they took 7 people, and it like literally tells you they took 6 people from the University of Baltimore and 1 person from UDC. And it tells you their 50th percentile. Most of them had a 3.3, right? Like it gives you, it's like here's the information. If you are applying to law school in any way, shape, or form, you need to be looking at the 509 reports. Now, there's another way that you can go. If you literally just Google ABA 509 reports, like literally just Google, the very first link is going to say standard 509 ABA required disclosure. You're going to click that. You can see all the years. You can see all the schools. So you can see their data from, listen, you can go back as far as 2011. You can be like, oh, their median was this, but now it's this. They used to give scholarship money like this, but now they give scholarship money like this. I want to empower you with knowledge, right? Like there is a lot of information in these reports. You can see about yield. You can see how many people they accepted versus how many people said yes to them, to see if yield protection is something. Like some schools, only 25% of people who they give offers to say yes. And so when you're thinking about things like wait lists and how they're making their decisions, a lot of it is based on yield protection because they want that number to go up. They're saying yes to people. They want people to say yes back to them. It does not feel good as a law school. And you're like, oh, okay, we've picked our class. And then like all these people say no. You're like, what the heck? Right? They didn't get into this business to be denied themselves. It's not the seat that they're comfortable in. And so they do a lot of waitlisting to protect their yield. So I just wanted to show you kind of how you can find that information. Now, I know that a question that a lot of you guys had is like, okay, but transferring from part-time programs. Whew. All right, and I have got a word for you guys. The very first thing that I will tell you about transferring is not to expect to transfer. It is definitely an option. You know, some people, they're like, well, I'm going to go to this law school and try to transfer. That is a fine, like, plan B, see? But I always say, make sure you're comfortable if you don't transfer. Because like I said, I mean, University of Maryland that year took 7. Like, transferring to law schools is not something that just anybody can do. And usually to transfer, you need to be in the top third or top quarter of your class. And that's really hard to predict. Like, you can think you will be, but like you might not be. That's just like the reality. Harvard Law School is not a ranked school. We actually don't have GPAs because we don't really have grades. We have H's, which is like honors and pass and low pass and dean's. We basically have honors and pass, right? I will tell you that I probably wasn't, if we had a ranking system, and we sort of did, I guess, at the end because of you know, awards and honors that people graduated with. But like, I don't know that I was in the top quarter of my class. There are probably people that got much better grades than me, and it's not because I wasn't like trying or doing well. I mean, I did very well in law school, as well as you can without grades. But to have that knowledge, or that to be the plan and the pressure, like law school's already a lot of pressure. So then to put on yourself, okay, I have to be in the top quarter of my class. I have to be in the top third of my class. It's a lot of pressure. Honestly, the largest piece of your transfer applications are your JD1 grades, like your first semester grades. Some, you know, there's also like kind of your second semester grades, depending on if you're transferring with early notification deadlines or like when you're kind of submitting your applications, when your grades are due. But for the most part, that first semester grade is going to be the most important thing. Your LSAT, not as important. You'll notice that they didn't list that on the 509 reports because what they have to report out to the ABA is your JD1 GPA. So, of course, I work with students on essays for transferring, and, you know, we do the transfer process, and, you know, your ability to try to get onto law review is really important. Your letters of recommendation from your professors are really important, but it's that JD1 GPA that is hard to predict. And so that's why I'm never a fan of someone using that as their plan from the get. Like, my plan is to go here and then transfer. Like, I don't know. I don't know. And so, you know, when we talked about those 509 reports, right, it's really important because they will show you what schools they pick from. For example, there's a lot of schools in New York, right? There's a ton of schools in New York, and I'm going to pick on Fordham, actually, because I think Fordham is like a popular school where people might like want to transfer to or from. So, I'm back on the 509 report. I'm scrolling all the way to the bottom where they talk about transfers. Okay. So Fordham took 20 transfers in the 2019-2020 cycle with an average JD1 GPA of 3.4, right? Okay, so you can see all of the schools that students transfer from, and it doesn't mean that you can't transfer if you're not on this list, but you'll notice that there isn't a super, super large range, right? The schools that you see are kind of the predictable. They're of course the next tier down, but they're kind of within a certain range. And most of these schools, they only took one or two people, right, from each of those schools. And then if we go even further up, right, let's say we look at NYU, their JD they took in 53, right? NYU is a school where in 2019-2020 they took in 50. They're a big school, right? So some of these numbers are as a proportion of the class. They have a JD1 GPA of 3.7, which is very high. And then you can see the schools that they transfer in from. And so you will see that there are some schools, a lot of schools in New York that are not on this list. Although, there are a good number from Fordham, a good number from Cardozo, right? So if your plan was to go to Fordham and transfer or Cardozo and transfer, there are people that have done that, right? If your plan is to go to Toro and transfer to NYU, not saying it's impossible, but is difficult, right? Because that's not typically where they pull transfers from. What does this all mean for people in part-time programs? Generally speaking, one, in terms of transferring, you can really only transfer after that first year if you're in a full-time program, right? Like most schools take transfers into the 2L program. What does that mean for part-time? A lot of cases, you want to check school by school, but in a lot of cases, you will really only be able to transfer from part-time to full-time within that school. So there's like kind of these two different schools of thoughts. There's moving from one part-time program to another part-time program. And then there's the school of thought moving from one part-time program to a full-time program. And let me tell you why it's a little difficult to go from a part-time program to a full-time program is because, like I said, that part-time program is longer. It's 4 years, which means that for the most part, you won't have enough credits at the end of your first year to transfer to a 2L program at a full-time school. You may need to take some classes over the summer in order to do that, but because of when the transfer timelines are, a lot of times those transfers, like from part-time to full-time, happen in-house. They happen within the actual law school itself because they already have kind of a pathway already laid out. So if that's something that you're thinking of, if you're like, I want to go from a part-time program to a full-time program, you want to be looking at schools that have already carved that path and said, yes, this is how you can transfer from part-time to full-time at our school. You can do this. You can take these classes over the summer, and then we'll bring you into the 2L full-time program. You can see if, because a lot of times those transfer applications are due before you would have those summer classes done in order to give you enough credits to transfer into a 2L program at another school. I'm not saying it's impossible. It's just very rarely done. It's not done often, I would say, because of the credit transfer situation, because you're not a full 1L. You haven't finished 1L. So it's hard to go into 2L at a full-time school. Now, going from a part-time to a part-time program, absolutely. And then you still want to be looking at the 509 reports and making determinations about what makes sense to transfer, given the strength of the part-time programs. And like I said, some schools' part-time programs are stronger than they're ranked higher relatively than their full-time programs. Like, Maryland is number 5 in the nation for part-time programs, but number 47. Whew, I'm a little dyslexic sometimes. 47 for full-time programs, like nationally, right? So there's a big difference between 5 and 47. So it might be easier sometimes to get yourself from Maryland to Georgetown, maybe from part-time programs, when you look at going from ranking number 5 to ranking number 1 versus going from ranking number 47 in a full-time program to ranking number 14, right? That's a bit of a jump. There's a lot of schools in between there. They're just less part-time programs, so the rankings are very different. What if I just start at a part-time program and then make it my plan to transfer to a T14? So keeping in line with everything that I said about like planning to transfer being a risky plan, a lot of part-time programs are not at the highest ranked schools. Just kind of like when you look at the T14, most of them don't have part-time programs. They are full-time schools. And so when you're talking about the caliber of school that they would even normally take as a transfer from full-time to full-time, it's a very different scale. So even if you pretend that the credit issue wasn't an issue, which is a really big issue, like the timeline for part-time programs versus full-time programs are just so different, especially then if you start doing like the weekend programs or the flex programs, that sort of thing. You're really talking about a different timeline. You might be at the 10th best part-time program in the country, but that's not going to hold water as much academically speaking, for some of those T14 schools. Again, not saying it's impossible. There's always exceptions to the standard advice, people who have done it, that kind of thing. Sometimes people are like, but this person did it, and that's fantastic. That's just not like how I'm going to counsel you on doing it, because it's not the most likely scenario, and I like to prepare for what's most likely versus like preparing to be like the exception to the rule. And so if you are though serious about making that kind of jump, you really need to make sure that your GPA is like, you have to be like the top of your class. If you're trying to transfer into a T14, you really do need to be at the top of your class. I don't mean to say that to be discouraging. I just like want to make sure that you're kind of going into this process with your eyes open. The other thing that I would mention is that sometimes, although I don't know always, but sometimes employers do look, it depends on where you get your part-time degree from, right? So for example, if you go part-time at Georgetown, I don't think any employer is going to be like, oh, but her GPA was at a part-time program. They're going to be fine. But as I mentioned, that some of these schools have higher part-time rankings than their full-time counterparts. So a school might be, and I just keep using 10, I actually don't know what that school is off the top of my head, but let's say they're 12. They're 12th in the part-time program. Very, very strong part-time program. But that full-time program school doesn't have as good a reputation. Employers are not as like cognizant of part-time program rankings. Employers are honestly mostly looking at the actual ranking of the full-time program because that is the most popular and most common. So when you think about the doors that school is opening, you want to make sure that you're going to a part-time program that has at least a fairly strong or decent full-time program reputation or ranking, even if it's just geographically, if you're going to a geographic school, because you may have done very well in your part-time program, but you also just want to make sure that the name of the school itself can still open the doors that you need it to open. And that is the LSAT Demon Scholarship Calculator. I really like it. So lsatdemon.com/scholarships. LSAT Demon is an LSAT test prep company. They have a myriad of different options. They have live classes. They have recorded classes. They have a podcast, Thinking LSAT, which I am subscribed to and I love. But what I really like is that, it's just an estimate. It's just an estimate. They have some assumptions there. Not all schools are on their list and they say so, but you can kind of put in your GPA and put in your LSAT and, say, I'm just going to throw out some random numbers here. That, whether you're an underrepresented minority, and, they'll tell you that these top schools are kind of need-based, Yale, Stanford, Harvard, and Columbia, so they don't really give merit-based scholarships, really. And then you'll see, it'll say, like, for some schools that you might, a scholarship is unlikely. This is funny, actually. I think I had a 3.3 or 3.4 on a 169, and I was offered a full tuition scholarship at UVA. But it's telling me that my scholarship is unlikely. But I also applied a million years ago. I just think that's funny. But they'll see, like, some of them are less than half tuition, some of them half to full tuition, some of them likely to get a full tuition or greater than full tuition. We talked about those stipends. So you could just kind of start to see, like I said, it's just an estimate, but it is kind of a way of being able to look at the scholarship numbers. So I'm going to close this out in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, first off, I just come to you and I say thank you. Thank you for your presence. Thank you for allowing us to spend this moment to explore our options together. Some of us are trying to figure out how to best continue this path that you've called us to. We have been called to law school, some of us for 1 month, some of us for 10 years, some of us for 30 years. No matter the time or the place, dear Heavenly Father, I know that you put that calling on our life for a reason, because you know the path that you want us to take and the destiny that you want us to step into. So I thank you for allowing us to be in this moment where we can listen to your call and be obedient to your call, and to find support with each other, to find support and guidance on this path, because you did not call us into isolation, but you actually called us into community with one another. So I thank you for this community. I thank you for the unity that we have, for the ability for us to pull others up as we climb, to each one teach one, and to just be the rock and foundation for each other. Dear Heavenly Father, I ask that you would send down wisdom, guidance, and discernment as students make the decision about applying to part-time versus full-time programs, about how to balance their other life obligations. I ask that you would send boldness and courage for those of who are thinking about making the leap of leaving their job, leaving their financial safety net to go to law school. I ask that you would remind them that you are the God of provision. You are the God who provides all our needs and ever so much more than we could think, ask, or imagine, that you will never leave us or forsake us, and that if you have called us to make a leap, that we can make a leap in faith. Because I know that you will not let us land on thorny soil, but that you would lift us up and carry us to our destiny. So I ask that you would embolden us with the faith and the trust to have in you, that we might not know where the process is leading and we might not know where it's taking us, but that we know that as long as we keep our eyes on you, you will continue to set our path straight. So I thank you, and I ask that you would just bring clarity, that you would just speak in a voice that is so clear. Sometimes you move through other people, you move through circumstances, or you move through signs. So I just ask that whatever it is that you need to send in order to help people figure out what kind of programs they should be applying to, that you would do that. I ask a special blessing on all those who are getting ready to enter part-time programs. I ask that you would remind them that you have not made any burden that is too hard for them to carry. And so while they are trying to juggle their home and their family and their kids, and maybe they're still doing quarantine school or at-home school or virtual learning or work from home, that you would just make it so that the burdens of their yoke become light, and that you will allow them to not have this detract from their law school dreams. But dear Heavenly Father, you would allow them to thrive in these programs, even amidst the other competing things for their attention, that you would still allow them to become the law student and eventually the lawyer that you have caused them to be, that they would thrive and make it happen. And when they look back on their time in law school, they will just be able to say, but God, I should not have been able to balance all that I did, but God. And that their life would be a testimony to others who are watching them, because there are always people who are watching us. There are always people in our midst, and we don't even know it, who are looking to us for inspiration. So I ask that you would continue to let them be a blessing to others as they look toward them and they look for inspiration, that you would allow them to be the door that opens for somebody else. So I ask that you would bless their part-time study program. I ask that you would bless their executive program, their weekend program, their JD Flex program, that you would just make it so that it is fully fulfilling. Even if it's part-time, that it is not a part-time experience, it is not part-time blessings, but that they have blessings rain down in abundance, even in a part-time program, dear Heavenly Father. I ask a special blessing over all of those who are considering transferring, who are one foot in at one school and perhaps another foot looking towards another school, that you would just be with them at their JD1 grades, both fall and spring semester, that you would put the professors in their life that they can get the letters of recommendation for, that you would open up the doors, that you would allow them, no matter what the 509 report says, dear Heavenly Father, that they might be that one. They might be that one from the school who is able to get into the door that you have opened. I ask that you would also, though, shut all the doors that they are not meant to go through. There can be so many distractions, dear Heavenly Father. There can be so many shiny objects and deception. So I ask that you would close all the doors that they are not supposed to go through and open the doors that they are supposed to go through. So even if they wonder, why didn't I get into that school? Why didn't that school work out? It's because you have shut the door so that they can walk into their purpose. Even for those right now who have already finished their cycle, who are waiting for answers, who are waitlisted, or who are, awaiting other notifications, that you would just continue to remind them that you have a plan and a purpose, and that we should be anxious in nothing but prayerful in all things, and take it to you with prayer and thanksgiving, and that you would make it right. So I just thank you right now for unexpected offers. I thank you in advance for scholarship offers. I thank you in advance for full rides. I thank you in advance for stipends. I thank you in advance for accountability partners. And I thank you in advance for mentorship programs. And I thank you in advance for special lunches and networking and all the things that you can rain down blessings in an admissions package. I thank you for it. I thank you in advance for all that you are doing in the lives of these your students who are striving for you, who are striving to make an impact in their communities. I thank you for allowing me this moment to be with them and to be the vessel through which they are able to gain more knowledge and clarity on the admissions process. I ask all of this in your son Jesus' name. Amen. I am always here for you. I love you, and I believe in your journey, and I believe in the attorney that you're going to be. So reach out to me if you need anything, and I will see you very shortly. Bye, guys.